Fluorescent lights hummed above me, a sickly buzz like flies over something long dead. I sat in a room that reeked of cheap coffee and forced enthusiasm. Across the polished table, Robert, my boss of nearly a decade, blinked as if he'd just been told the sky was falling. To his left, Sarah from HR clutched a folder, looking like she'd found a baby she wasn't sure she wanted to keep.
"Susan,"
Robert began, clearing his throat, the way people do when they're about to deliver devastating news but want to sound regretful. "We've been evaluating operational efficiencies. And optimizing synergy, got it." I cut him off. Corporate's memo, sent 5 minutes ago, was practically glowing in his eyes. Streamlining, cost-cutting, restructuring. No one ever said, "We're letting you go because a spreadsheet dictated it." But that was the truth. They handed me a small beige box. Too small for 10 years of my life, but apparently just right for what they thought I was worth. I stared at it, then at Robert, who couldn't meet my gaze. I wondered how many unread emails he had from me. Warnings about the proprietary authentication system. How it was a temporary fix. How they never gave me the budget to properly secure it. I stood slowly. No tears, no outbursts. Just the kind of chilling calm that precedes a major system crash. As I reached the door, I dropped a final, poisoned whisper. "Just so you know, the main server authentication is still running on that old biometric protocol I set up. You'll probably want to migrate that over the weekend." Robert squinted, as if I'd spoken ancient code. Sarah glanced at him, then back at me, her expression a mix of confusion and discomfort. I walked out before they could say anything foolish enough to make me feel anything. By the time I reached the parking lot, the setting sun dipped behind the glass facade of the building, that towering monument to mediocrity I'd kept running with digital ingenuity and endless caffeine. My keycard didn't work anymore, symbolic really. The funny thing was, the system that deactivated it still needed my face to function. I slid into my car, my trusty old sedan with the cracked dashboard and emergency cat treats in the glove box. As the engine turned over, I glanced back at the building. They'd just dismissed the only person holding the keys to their digital kingdom, and they hadn't even asked where the lock was. The drive home felt like pushing through thick mud, a faint smile on my face. I wasn't crying, not even close, but every exit I passed beckoned, a place where I could pull over and scream until my voice gave out. Instead, I gripped the steering wheel, letting the California highway unfurl beneath me like a slow procession. The sky was the color of a forgotten file folder, fitting. I cracked the window, lit a cigarette. The ashtray already looked like the aftermath of a bad breakup. I inhaled deeply, enough to make my lungs protest, and exhaled slowly, watching the smoke curl like all the respect I'd never received from that office. No one truly saw it, did they? We were the silent guardians, summoned only when the network crashed or someone mistyped their password too many times. I was the one they called when their screens froze, when they downloaded malware clicking on a fake software update, when Robert's laptop started making strange whirring noises. That one turned out to be a mouse living in the fan, true story. Through it all, I stayed. 10 years. 10 years of fixing problems before they even knew they had them. How many firewalls had I configured? How many data breaches had I prevented? How many times had I kept them from becoming a cautionary tale in the news? They didn't care. I remembered the budget meeting vividly. Some fresh-faced intern suggested a cloud-first model, and everyone nodded as if they understood. I brought up the aging server racks, originally purchased during the dot-com boom, and suggested we finally replace them, maybe even upgrade the authentication systems before they crumbled like stale crackers. Robert smiled, like a man who thought bandwidth was a rock band, and said, We just don't have the resources for that right now. Right, but they had resources for a gourmet coffee bar and those ridiculous standing desks no one used. So I made do. I built a workaround. I implemented the biometric lockout, not out of malice, but desperation. It was either that or let their data be exposed to attacks from across the globe. I even documented it, sent emails, made recommendations, filed reports. They ignored every single one. It wasn't revenge, not then. It was survival. But now, a quiet seed had begun to sprout in my chest. Not rage. Rage burns hot and fast. This was colder, slower, more deliberate. It was the feeling of being overlooked one too many times and realizing that perhaps being invisible had its advantages. I pulled into my driveway. My house was quiet, the kind of quiet that asked nothing of you. I sat in the car a moment longer, the engine ticking as it cooled, and stared into the middle distance. No one ever asked, "Hey, Susan, what happens if you leave?" Well, they were about to find out. I woke before dawn, not from anxiety, though it lingered, but because my body had forgotten how to sleep past 6 after a decade of early morning server alerts and urgent password resets from Robert's tablet. I stood in my kitchen, barefoot, wrapped in an old hoodie that smelled of dryer sheets and resignation. Coffee brewed, slow and steady, filling the air with that comforting, burnt bean aroma I hadn't realized I needed. Then I powered up the pressure washer. Not out of anger, but purpose. There's something therapeutic about stripping grime off concrete while your former employer's internal systems are collapsing like a Jenga tower at a toddler's party. I wasn't gloating, not yet. I was scrubbing, deep cleaning, removing a decade of moss, algae, and psychic debris. I imagined each sweep of the water blade erasing another overlooked contribution. The firewall configured on Christmas Eve. Recovering Robert's files after he spilled kombucha on his SSD. Setting up two-factor authentication only for them to bypass it with sticky notes. The more I cleaned, the calmer I felt. My patio began to look like something from a home improvement magazine, minus the happy couple. I turned off the washer, wiped my face, and stepped back to admire the freshly sanctified cement. It gleamed, not unlike my conscience. I didn't touch my phone all day. No emails, no Slack, no Teams, no desperate, "Hey Susan, quick question" messages. I buried it under a dish towel and let the digital world scream into the void. The silence was delicious. Sunday, I tackled the pantry, alphabetized every spice jar, wiped down every can, and tossed expired sadness like artichoke hearts from 2017 into the bin. My body moved with a rhythm I hadn't felt since before they started calling me tech wizard. Like it was a compliment instead of an excuse to dump 5 people's jobs on my plate. I found 3 bottles of sriracha and exactly 0 self-pity. By noon, I had an emotional clarity that bordered on psychopathic. Not numb, but serene. Like I was sitting on a hill, watching a forest fire I didn't start and wouldn't stop. And somewhere deep within that smoke, I knew someone had finally tried to reboot something they shouldn't have. Still, I didn't check. Let them sweat. By Sunday night, my phone was vibrating in pulses, voicemails stacking up like overdue bills. I turned it face down, poured myself a glass of Pinot Noir, and sat on my freshly cleaned patio with a blanket over my lap and whiskers curled beside me like a judgmental loaf of fur. The night air smelled of damp leaves and consequences. I watched the stars, listened to the chirp of crickets and the distant hum of tires. The world kept turning, utterly unaware that somewhere in an office park across town, a dozen grown adults were yelling at their monitors like angry toddlers at a broken vending machine. Revenge? No, I didn't lift a finger. That was the beauty of it. When you've been the silent backbone of a digital kingdom for 10 years, all you have to do is stop. And then wait. Let them try to fix it without the ghost. Monday morning arrived without fanfare. No alarms, no corporate pings, just the low gurgle of my coffee maker and the soft creak of an aging house finally exhaling with me. I wrapped both hands around my mug like it was a sacred relic and stepped out onto the patio that now glistened like a polished headstone. My throne, my altar, my holy ground of quiet retribution. The sky was that soft, muted gray California does so well. Heavy, promising rain or redemption. I sat in my patio chair, blanket across my knees, whiskers at my feet like a tiny, disinterested sphinx. Somewhere down the street, a garbage truck groaned mechanically. The world was waking up, but not their world. Their world was already screaming, and I wouldn't even look. I sipped slowly, each drop of coffee a meditation. My phone sat face down on the kitchen counter, vibrating every few minutes like a dying cicada. I didn't move, didn't twitch. I let it happen. I wanted it to happen. Because somewhere, right now, the first poor soul had just clocked in, sat down, and hit the power button on a machine they assumed was loyal. The screen flickered on, cursor blinked, then nothing, then something. I pictured it, that confused little squint, the tapping of keys, the futile jiggle of the mouse, then the reboot, the triple sigh, the call to Robert, who was probably already sweating through his company logo polo. And somewhere between the second, "Have you tried unplugging it?" and the 12th, "I don't know, it just won't let me in," real panic started, because this wasn't a glitch. This was a haunting. The biometric lockout protocol I installed was never flashy. It didn't announce itself with sirens or skull and crossbones. It was elegant, quiet, a system of silent thresholds and checks that relied on one very simple fact. Only I could approve access. It was meant to protect them. Now it protected me. I pictured Sarah from HR squinting at her screen, tapping the keyboard as if it had insulted her. I imagined the marketing guy, Alex, who always wore ironic t-shirts and couldn't open a PDF without texting me frantically, now Googling how to fix computer on his phone while his desktop refused to obey. I imagined Robert finally realizing something was truly wrong. It must be so loud over there. Phones ringing, meetings failing, panic bubbling through glass corridors. And here I was, watching birds pick at the seed I'd scattered yesterday. Mostly blue jays, loud, aggressive little creatures, fitting. One of them flapped onto the back of my chair and stared at me, as if deciding whether I was worth the trouble. I raised my mug in salute. "Morning, chaos," I said softly. It wasn't vengeance, not exactly. It was the absence of obligation. The pleasure of knowing I no longer owed them my breath, my time, or my genius. And every minute I didn't pick up that phone, the value of my silence grew. I leaned back, letting the warmth of the mug seep into my palms, letting the empire rot. This patio was my cathedral, and today I worshipped the sound of nothing. The silence fractured. The first buzz was soft, barely noticeable under the hum of my kettle boiling for cup number 2. I let it pass. The second followed a second later, sharper this time. Then came the third, like a dog whining at the back door after tracking mud through a house it never built. I walked to the kitchen and glanced at the screen. 3 words. "Susan, it's chaos." Below it, a string of frantic emojis and a follow-up from Alex. the junior graphic designer with anime hair and a heart too soft for that toxic cave of beige walls and management jargon. Nobody can log in. The screens are weird.
Are you okay? Please tell me you're okay.
I stared at his message like it was a telegram from the front lines. And then it started, the flood. Buzz, voicemail from Robert, the first of many. I didn't play it yet. I wanted the moment to steep like strong tea. Instead, I set the phone down, poured my water over a fresh bag of Earl Grey, and stirred slowly, listening to the voicemail icon blink at me like a ticking bomb. I pressed play. Susan, hi. Listen, we've got a situation here. I'm not pointing fingers or anything, but the network is... Something's very wrong. I don't know if maybe you still have credentials that are impacting the system. The login process is completely locked. The entire office can't get past some kind of image, some message. His voice cracked. I don't even know what it means. Our client files, Susan. If this is you, please call me. We can work something out. Work something out? He was bargaining now. Already, the second voicemail came in as I sipped. Susan, this is serious. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but legal is telling me to document everything. If this is your doing, there will be consequences. I hope this isn't how you want to end things. I smiled into my mug. I wanted exactly this. They thought firing me was like tossing out an old printer. Unplug and replace. No one thought to ask what happened when the printer was the power source, the firewall, the architecture, and the ghost in the goddamn machine. Another voicemail. I didn't play this one. I could already imagine the tone shift. Desperation frosted with faux authority, trying to sound in control while the building's digital soul collapsed around them. I checked Signal, out of morbid curiosity. I was no longer a member of their internal chats, of course. But Emily from accounting, sweet, quiet Emily, who always left a chocolate on my monitor when she'd borrow my keyboard cleaner, found me. Her message was just this. It's bad, really bad. The whole place is melting down. I hope you're somewhere peaceful. Then another one. I miss you already. They were idiots. You didn't deserve this. That one punched through the armor just a bit. I stared at the message for a long time before setting the phone down again. Guilt flickered, but only briefly. Emily would be fine. She was too smart and too steady to go down with the rest. The ones who never listened, never saw me, never read a single one of my flagged reports. They were the ones circling the drain now. I stepped outside again, into the weak morning sun, just in time to see a blue jay dive bomb a squirrel off the bird feeder. The squirrel squealed, offended, and bolted. I let out a snort. There's an ecosystem to everything. When you remove the keystone species, things fall apart fast. And right now, that office was a dying forest when I'd stopped tending it. A message came in from Emily. I hope you're okay. They were fools to let you go. Just that. No question, no favor, no veiled panic hidden behind false cheer. Just kindness from the one person in that office who never asked me to fix a thing, yet always brought me a slice of lemon cake on my birthday. Cake with the sugary glaze that sticks to your teeth and makes you feel 7 years old again. I stared at her message like it was a relic dug from beneath the rubble of some ancient civilization, intact, impossibly untouched by the carnage I'd engineered. I sat back down on my patio, phone in one hand, guilt like a slow leak in the other. Emily. She used to stay late, not because she had to, but because the numbers mattered to her. She was the type who triple-checked vendor invoices even when no one asked her to. The type who brought in her own space heater when HR said the thermostat was fixed. She once snuck me a latte during a quarterly budget call because she knew I hadn't eaten that day. She was never part of the rot, and yet now she was inside the blast radius. I hadn't thought much about collateral damage. This wasn't meant to be a scorched earth campaign, not really. I didn't script some grand system meltdown or plant a logic bomb waiting to detonate on my way out. No ransomware, no sabotage. All I did was nothing. I stopped holding it together, and that nothing, it was enough to start a slow, beautiful collapse. But Emily's message flicked a nerve I'd buried under sarcasm and coffee. It reminded me of all the good ones, the few decent people tucked into the crevices of that crumbling company. People like Alex, who never once talked down to me, or Lisa from reception, who used to set aside packages so they wouldn't get stolen by Brad from procurement. The ones who didn't use me like a walking tech manual in a cardigan. They didn't deserve this. But the company did, because it never protected them either. It just used them, quietly, invisibly, until they broke or gave up, just like it did to me. It's not that I wanted anyone to suffer, but I knew deep down that the only way to expose how brittle the entire structure was to remove the one person silently duct taping it all together. And now the duct tape was gone. Emily sent another message a few minutes later. Don't answer. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you did. We all saw it, even if they didn't. I swallowed hard, took another sip of tea that suddenly tasted like ash. Guilt curled up in my ribs, purring like a cat with claws. It would pass. Emily would survive. Alex would find another job, probably one where he wouldn't be the only designer doing 3 people's work for half a salary. Lisa had a side business making custom candles that I always thought would take off. The good ones, they'd land on their feet. It was the rest I wanted to see flailing. The ones who looked through me like I was a server rack on legs. The ones who thought tech meant magic. The ones who now finally understood that not all fires come with smoke. Some just flicker quietly behind glass until the oxygen runs out. I texted Emily back. Thank you, really. Keep your head down today. I think the worst of it's still coming. And it was, because the message on their screens, they hadn't even seen the real punchline yet. I held out as long as I could. Truly, I did. But curiosity had sharpened into something unbearable, like a loose tooth you can't stop tonguing. I tapped the browser open on my tablet, the one I rarely used, and logged into an old burner social media account I'd made back when the office was experimenting with influencer campaigns, and I wanted to stalk the interns anonymously. The handle was something like Silicon Sage Susan, fitting now in a poetic kind of way. I typed in the company name slowly, like a surgeon prepping for a risky incision. And there it was. The first post hit like a shot of espresso to the soul. Massive outage at company name. Full lockdown. Internal systems frozen since 8:45 a.m. Staff baffled. No comment yet from leadership. 15 retweets. Nothing major, just a whisper in the wind. But I kept scrolling. A reporter from a local tech blog posted a thread. Hearing chatter from sources inside, company name, that the entire firm has been digitally paralyzed. Apparently, their only IT administrator was laid off Friday. They've lost access to client files, HR systems, even basic login. Developing story. Tech fail. It was the next one that did it. I laughed out loud, a loud, hoarse bark that startled poor Whiskers off the patio railing. It was a blurry photo from someone inside the office. The camera quality was garbage, probably taken with one of those cracked phones Robert always said he was going to upgrade next quarter. But even in the haze, you could make it out. A sea of monitors, rows and rows of them, each one glowing with the same image. Whiskers sprawled on my old desk, paws curled, eyes closed in absolute, unbothered bliss. a sunbeam halo around him like he'd just descended from a nap into sainthood. Below him, in perfect centered white text on a slate gray background. Your access is being managed by the new head of infrastructure. He is currently on a break. All inquiries will be addressed after his nap. The post's caption: Major tech meltdown at company name. Source says they fired their only IT person on Friday. Every screen is frozen on a picture of a cat. Blessed #karma. Susan was right. It was already pushing 8,000 likes, over 2,000 shares. I scrolled the replies. A few co-workers, probably using burner accounts themselves, were chiming in. We told them not to let her go. Susan was the system. She warned them repeatedly. A reply from a stranger. This isn't sabotage. This is poetry. I couldn't argue. The public humiliation hit sweeter than I ever imagined. I didn't plan for this part. I never imagined it would spill beyond their office walls. But seeing it unfold, watching the company name turn into a trending punchline, was like sipping aged whiskey and realizing you hadn't forgotten how to taste joy. I refreshed again. Local news outlets were picking it up now. Critical tech failure paralyzes local tech firm. Sources say a rogue system is controlling all internal operations. One anchor even quoted Whisker's message on air. I shut the tablet and leaned back in my chair, heart steady, not racing, not giddy, just right. Because for once, the world got to see what I saw all along. That without the quiet ones, the ghost labor, the duct tape heroes, the women who never raised their voices but kept the lights on, everything breaks. And sometimes it breaks loud. The call came in from a number I didn't recognize. Area code local, though. And I knew before I picked up it wasn't Robert. Robert's voice had already burned itself into my voicemail logs. A sad mixtape of regret and administrative breakdowns. No, this was someone higher up the food chain. The kind of voice that only leaves a corner office when forced by fire drill or public scandal. I let it ring twice, then I answered. Susan speaking. A beat of silence, then a voice, all bluster and entitlement, kicked in like it thought it was still in charge. Ms. Lewis, this is Peter Grayson, CEO of company name. I believe we have an urgent issue that requires your immediate attention. His tone was the exact blend of furious landlord and used to getting his way, probably the kind of guy who thinks saying circle back is a personality trait. I didn't respond. I let him feel the weight of that silence. He stumbled on. We've experienced a highly disruptive technical failure this morning. I've been told by multiple team members that this lockout is connected to a system you previously configured, which appears to be operating independently of any current administrator access. Is that accurate? I sipped my tea, still hot, still perfect. It's not inaccurate, I said. He huffed. Let me be clear. If this situation is in any way being intentionally escalated by you, whether through deliberate inaction or otherwise, we will be forced to explore legal remedies. This has already caused significant reputational damage to our brand. Our clients are losing access. Because the biometric protocol I installed 3 years ago, after your board denied a $10,000 infrastructure upgrade, was never replaced, despite 3 formal recommendations, all documented, all emailed, all ignored. I finished for him. His voice faltered. Be that as it may. You had one IT admin, I continued calmly. Was managing endpoint security, data recovery, backup protocols, and internal user support for over 90 employees. You laid her off without documentation, without handoff, without redundancy, without even asking what she actually did. I didn't make that decision personally, he snapped. No, I said. You just signed off on it. He switched gears like a man trying to reverse a sinking yacht. Susan, look, we clearly underestimated some things. That's obvious. But I'm willing to discuss a Well, a consulting arrangement. Just to stabilize things. A few hours of your time. We can negotiate a generous rate. The desperation was leaking through his teeth. And what happens after I fix it? I asked. You shuffle someone into the role who doesn't understand the system, slap them with 6 extra responsibilities, and forget the lesson. His voice softened. We don't want to fight you. We just need this resolved. I let out a breath through my nose, calm, colder than ice. Peter, I said, I warned you all repeatedly. I offered solutions. I built contingency plans. You chose to ignore everyone. I'm not retaliating. I'm not hacking. I'm not doing anything. This system is automated. It's self-regulated, secure, and tied to a single access authority. When you decided to discard that authority, a long, ragged silence stretched between us. So you can't fix it? He finally asked, voice smaller now. I smiled. I won't. There's a difference. Another silence. I imagined him sweating in a glass-walled conference room, legal team hovering, PR consultant Googling how to spin, paralyzed by cat photo. Then I ended it. You didn't value my work, I said, calm as a glacier. So I automated it. The system is now fully managed. I'm afraid I can't help you. I hung up. Then I blocked the number. The masterpiece wasn't born from malice. It was born from a quiet afternoon, a sunbeam, and a particularly photogenic loaf of fur named Whiskers. I remembered the moment perfectly, 3 months before the layoff, when I still gave a damn. I'd come home early after a network migration that went so smooth it made me suspicious. Whiskers was passed out on my desk, head tucked into his paws, tail curled like a comma. The light hit just right, so I took the shot. Loaded my DSLR, cleaned the frame, adjusted for warmth, post-processed it, until every whisker glowed like it had a tiny halo. That photo wasn't just a picture. It was serenity incarnate, the opposite of every chaotic, fire drill-laced day I'd spent under those godforsaken fluorescent lights. And now it lived on every screen in that office. 57 desktops, 8 conference rooms, reception, the CEO's twin monitors. Even the ancient printer kiosk someone had hacked to run Windows XP. All of them displayed the same image. Whiskers, eyes closed, curled in a halo of golden light on my desk, next to a sticky note that said, "You got this." Beneath him, in soft white calibri, centered with surgical precision, was the message. Your access is being managed by the new head of infrastructure. He is currently on a break. All inquiries will be addressed after his nap. His compensation is 12 cans of salmon pate per week. You are already in arrears. It was perfect. Not cruel, not aggressive, just a mirror held up to their own incompetence, wrapped in digital silk and cat hair. The best part? It wasn't even a system failure. The machines were fine, the network intact, the files all there. But the interface, the face had changed. And until the new head of infrastructure was properly compensated, nobody was getting past that screen. Somewhere in the office, they were probably debating whether this constituted ransomware. It didn't. No encryption, no payload, just an image. A barrier made of fur and pure, distilled disrespect. I stood in my kitchen, drained the last of my tea, and tapped my banking app. My severance, light as it was, had landed. I transferred it to savings, labeled the transaction, stupid tax refund. Then I picked up my keys, whistled for Whiskers, and headed to the pet store. We were overdue for a splurge. He rode in the passenger seat like a king surveying his new territory. I bought him a new fountain water bowl, 3 bags of pate, and one of those ridiculous window hammocks he always seemed interested in but never committed to. When we got home, he jumped into it without hesitation, settled in, closed his eyes. Nap mode engaged. I looked out over my patio, the same spot I'd watched the chaos unfold from, and let out a long, slow breath. Not peace, exactly. Not forgiveness, but closure. The bridges weren't just burned. The riverbed was salted. The GPS still thinks the company exists, but it doesn't. Not in any way that matters. And me? I report to a new boss now. He pays in purrs and naps. And unlike the last guy, he never underestimates me.